Yesterday on Locked On Kings, we broke down the schedule release for the Sacramento Kings 2022-2023 season. This episode, we're going even deeper, and I'm not doing it alone. Kenny Caraway from D-Lo and KC on ESPN 1320. He is back on Locked On Kings to join me. We're going really in-depth into this schedule, going to look at the start to this Kings season, the importance of the Kings getting off to a good start, the importance of the Kings handling their business at home, taking on good teams early in the season, whether or not that's a good thing. We're going to look at the Tyrese Halliburton game and talk about Tyrese's return and the significance of that game for the Sacramento Kings from a winning standpoint. And on top of that, national TV games, NBA TV. Does that count as national TV or not? We touch on all this and more on today's episode of Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all regular season and all off season. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports producer and a reporter at ABC 10 News here in the California capital. And what can we do after schedules drop other than dissect them and really dive into them? And don't worry, we're not going to just gloss over things. It's really in-depth conversation today, kind of share with you in the open what Kenny and I are going to be talking about. The reality is it's an 82-game schedule. We know you have 41 home games. You know you have 41 away games. And as much as we want to break down things, in reality, the Kings have to handle their business in a lot of ways. And that's going to be a theme that Kenny and I touch on a lot in this conversation, is even if you're looking at how many back-to-backs they have, home stretches, road trips, how many games the Kings will have more rest than their opponents, how many games or travel miles the Kings will have, especially at the end of the season. You look at all this, and we talk about all this because these are all talking points, especially during the slow time of the regular season. But in reality, for the Sacramento Kings, it doesn't matter. The majority of games on the schedule are going to look difficult for the Kings because the Kings are not the best team or one of the best teams in the NBA. Kenny and I really touch on that. So I'm not going to spoil anything else. Here is my conversation with my friend from ESPN 1320, the KC and D-Lo and KC, Kenny Caraway. Pleasure to be joined by the KC and D-Lo and KC on ESPN 1320. Kenny Caraway here with me back on the Locked On Kings podcast. And KC, now that the Kings schedule is out, we know we're just over 2 months away before the start of the regular season. With the schedule being out, does that help or hurt your patience? Because it's made me even more impatient at this point. It's nice to know who they're facing. It's nice to be able to look at and be able to kind of map out the season, but it makes it worse for me.
Yeah, it absolutely didn't help. I can tell you that. You know what I mean? I was talking to, I think, James Ham about this the other day, and it really is impressive, I guess you could say, on the behalf of Monty McNair and what he was able to do, and kind of baffling that they have been able to get this fan base, get the people that cover the team like you and like me, to get excited about this team. Because last year, I didn't think there was any way that people would be excited in the offseason and leading up into opening night, because last year was such a god-awful year. We said it a number of different times. It was one of the worst years, if not the worst year in the history of Sacramento Kings basketball when you take everything into consideration, expectations, the extension of the playoff drought, and all this other stuff, and how bad they were, how desolate they were on some nights. And I just didn't think there was any way, we could fast forward to August 17th and people would be excited about the beginning of the season and looking forward to it. But here we are. He had a phenomenal draft. Keegan Murray did a phenomenal job in Summer League. He got 2 big-time acquisitions in the offseason, getting Malik Monk in free agency, Kevin Huerter to be a trade. And you combine that with having Sabonis around, De'Aaron Fox, some of the things that we've heard, Mike Brown, the new coach. And here we are, just not being able to wait, not being able to contain ourselves, waiting for opening night at the Golden One Center. And I didn't think we'd be able to get here after the way last season ended.
I think it goes even further than that, though, Kenny. Is you've done a good job as a general manager when you've made people very excited for training camp. I can't remember ever being this excited for a training camp in my lifetime because of the off-season battles and the position battles that are going to be happening. And we're here to talk about the schedule, not necessarily talk about that. But Kenny, I cover basketball mainly. Like I pay attention to football, pay attention to baseball, but basketball here on Locked On Kings is obviously what we cover versus you on a radio show. You cover the Niners, you cover the Raiders, you cover all sports.
Right.
To me, and I'm probably a little biased because of my basketball coverage, the NBA does the schedule release better than any other professional sport, at least here in the United States. I'm more invested in schedule release day of NBA than I am for the NFL. Do you think, because both the NBA and NFL have found a way to be around the clock, around the calendar, impactful and interesting and relevant? It's their off seasons. People still care about the NBA and the NFL. Do you think the NBA schedule release is more of a big deal than the NFL schedule release?
It's interesting because both schedules are kind of set. Obviously, the NBA is set because you play everybody. NFL, there's a pattern to it. So every 4 years you do this and that, and then if you're playing away or home. I know people, and myself, I'm a big 49er fan. So it's always interesting really to see like when the games are placed, like when are you playing this team, if you're playing on Monday night, national TV and all this other stuff. But the NBA, they've done a phenomenal job, I'd say, this offseason as opposed to maybe even past off seasons, because it was still a big deal back then. But this offseason kind of trickling things out, Christmas Day games, opening night, national TV games. They got a new thing called Rivalry Week, and they're unveiling that in the middle of January and things of that nature. So maybe I'm biased too because I'm an NBA guy. I'm a basketball guy. And then maybe if you ask, somebody who's a football guy, they'd say clear and away the NFL does a better job. But I'd like to say it's at least about even, because I get just as hyped for the NBA schedule knowing that you're going to play everybody. And there is no secret. There is no Monday night football that like, oh, this is on Monday or Sunday. Nothing like that. You just know what it is. Maybe you have a couple national TV games here and there, but you know what it is. Yet we're still excited to see opening night, to see what's going on Christmas, to see how many back-to-backs you get and all this other stuff. So, yeah, I think they do a great job with the schedule release.
I think it was NBA TV that not too long ago did an actual schedule release show. And they did it for 1 year and then haven't done it since. And I wonder why, because I remember really enjoying that schedule release show. Obviously, the Sacramento Kings were a very minimal part of that show because of their lack of national TV games. But let's start there, Kenny, with this new schedule. The debate right now around the world is NBA TV a national TV game? Because at least beside that, the Sacramento Kings did get one ESPN game against the Houston Rockets, which I thought was interesting. I mean, you have the Jabari Smith Jr. versus Keegan Murray 3 versus 4. But that's a little surprising. I think the last time the Kings had a national TV game in Sacramento, or at least one of the biggest times that I remember, was I think it was a TNT game, and it was against the Houston Rockets in Sacramento. So it's an interesting. That was with James Harden on the squad and everything like that. And I think that was Fox's rookie season or sophomore season. I think it was a sophomore season, the 2018 season. But the Rockets are an interesting pick for an opponent on national TV.
Yeah, I mean, you've got the matchup with Jabari Smith Jr. and Keegan Murray. That's probably fueling that one. I know Oklahoma City, Orlando, Detroit, Utah don't have an ESPN game on the docket, but I think all four of those teams have a TNT game, and one of them is Orlando versus OKC. So, the NBA, they try to get into the whole idea of, having the rookies matching up against each other and their first matchup or second matchup against each other, whatever the case may be. So it is surprising, to a certain degree, but I get where they're coming from with it. To answer your initial question, you got to say NBA TV is a national TV game. You have to. Now, it's not on the same platform as TNT and ESPN, but I equate this all the time to just simple logic. My cousin, he lives in Staten Island, New York. When the Kings are playing on nothing but regional, he can't watch the Kings unless he has League Pass, which he doesn't. He can't watch the Kings. When the Kings are playing NBA TV, he can watch the Kings. that is damn near the definition of national TV games. So, if you want to call it national TV light or whatever the case may be, that's fine. But the fact remains, it is a national TV game. And the Kings got 5 of those things this year.
Can we meet in the middle, though, and understand and recognize that TNT and ESPN are the creme de la creme of national TV for the NBA? Really, I consider personally TNT, because I'm just such a fan of what TNT does and the whole crew. I consider that to be like the ultimate national TV game. No disrespect to
There's
ESPN.
levels to this thing. Absolutely. There's levels to this thing.
We need to get a Kings TNT game. Like, that's what I want, because I know in NBA TV, they just take the local broadcast, which is not a bad thing. Katie rather, and
Mark Jones.
Mark do a phenomenal job. You might even get Mark on ESPN on that broadcast. We don't know.
Sure.
So we'll have to wait and see with that.
So I think you're in the camp where it's not a national TV game.
I'm more in the camp of it doesn't count as much to me, but by definition, yes, it is a national TV game. I personally don't consider it because, again, I look at ESPN and TNT on a completely different tier than NBA TV.
Understandable. I'll ask you this, though. When an NFL team plays on NFL Network, is that a national TV game?
Does NFL Network ever have Monday or Thursday nights?
They got Thursday nights. They have some Saturday nights.
Then I would consider that.
Same thing.
Yeah. All right. Well, again, we'll meet in the middle, Kenny Caraway. But also, NFL is kind of different because they don't have their own local broadcast teams. Like, I almost consider, even though it's depending upon what you see is localized, like, even though the Raiders are on CBS, the Niners are on Fox, it's still a national CBS and Fox team that flies in or actually does that game. But regardless, we'll have that to watch here, thankfully, before we'll have Kings basketball to watch to kill some of the time. But
the other thing, and I don't mean to cut you off, but the other thing about that, though, that I liked is all the national TV games, quote unquote, whatever you want to say, they're all at home. So go to one center, Sacramento Kings fans, they'll have an opportunity to be on stage. And if the Kings are good this year, obviously that place is going to be rocking, and it's going to show the entire NBA nation that they're hyped up in Sacramento. They're ready to go. That's a great place to play. And regardless if you're talking TNT, NBA TV, ESPN, it doesn't matter. When you can get Kings fans in the Golden One Center on full display, that's always a good thing if everything's rolling.
You're hanging out with some friends and putting back a few drinks. A few becomes a few too many. And as the evening comes to an end and people start to head out, you think of calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. You can make it home okay. It's no big deal. What are the odds that you get pulled over anyway? And even so, what's the worst that could happen? Really, your insurance goes up. You lose your license. You lose your job. You total your car. You kill someone. Everybody knows about the risks of driving drunk. The results are tragic and often deadly. However, that still doesn't stop everyone from getting behind the wheel while under the influence. That's why police officers are out right now looking for impaired drivers on the roads to save lives. So if you think that you're going to drive after a few drinks, think again, play it safe, and plan ahead to get a ride. It only takes one mistake to change your life or someone else's forever. Drive sober or get pulled over. Kenny, looking at the beginning of the schedule, the first thing that jumps off the page to you is, hey, the Kings start and play 4 out of their first 5 games at home. Then you see, they play the Golden State Warriors 3 times in the first 12 games. Then you look at the 10 games that the Kings are playing. You look at the opponent: Portland, Clippers, Warriors, Memphis, Miami, Charlotte, Miami again, Orlando, Warriors again. Like, it's a challenging stretch for some people. Are saying, man, I could see the Kings easily going 3-7 during that stretch and things like that. I know I've talked about with you and D-Lo on your show. I think the start of the season is going to be crucial for Sacramento if they want to accomplish their goal of actually making the playoffs. Not just the play-in, but the playoffs. They need to get off to a good start. I look at you facing the Clippers that early at home. I look at you facing the Warriors 3 times in the first 4 games. Obviously, you'd rather face other teams than the defending champions. But if you're going to catch these teams, I think it's better to catch them early on when they haven't geared up or are not in regular season form yet. In the case of the Clippers, we haven't seen that Clippers team play together for a very long time, and you're at home. That might be a prime opportunity for you to steal a win there at the beginning of the season. Am I putting too much optimism into that, or do you think there is a benefit maybe to playing some of those really, really established teams early on before they get into playoff mode come February, March, and April?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree with what you're saying in that respect. I mean, you may be able to quote unquote catch the Clippers or the Warriors, just kind of warming up, getting things into gear as the season starts. So I completely understand that. But there's two things that I think about when I think about the start of the season. Number one, I know you have your OKCs and your Houstons and then Orlando and maybe Utah this year. I get all that. But to me, the NBA is stacked. The NBA is stacked. Like all these teams got somebody that can go off for 40 on your head at any given point. All these teams on any given night can hit 12, 13, 14 threes in a ball game and give you a loss. Obviously, there's levels to it. I get that. But it's not a night off in the NBA. You know what I mean? It's just not a night off. So I don't think outside of playing those four teams that I mentioned consecutively for the first 12 games, I don't think there would be a situation where it's like, oh yeah, it's a good start to the season. Like, no, you're gonna play good teams. That's just what it is because the NBA is stacked. So there's that. The other thing about it is no matter what is in front of you on the schedule, if you're the Sacramento Kings, the one thing that I think this year needs to be about, or one of the things I should say, is they got to get into a mode where you look at a 10-game stretch like that and you go, oh man, they might go 3-7 in this one. You got to, schedule some losses here. Yeah, we get all that. We understand the past and all this other stuff. But if you're going to be a good team, if you're going to be a team that's a playoff team, you're going to have to beat some good teams, number one. And you can't just look at a 10-game stretch and say, well, man, they might lose 7 games here. That's not a playoff team. Like if you're realistically looking at a team and saying, hey, we got a 10-game stretch, they might lose 7, then just forget the playoffs right now. Because if you're a playoff team, it shouldn't matter who you're playing. You should never be looking at it in any type of stretch, a 4-game, 6-game, 8-game, 10-game stretch, and thinking anything lower than 500. Anything lower than 500. Now, is that realistic? Are they a playoff team? Are they good enough for that? I don't know. But the mentality for that team, number one, and then hopefully for us as people who follow the team and are fans of the team, hopefully that changes where we see a stretch of games. We're not looking at winning 30% of those games. Like if that's the case, let's just pack it up right now.
Right. And the 500 thing, I think, is a really good note. Just to be average, looking at the Sacramento Kings through the lens of this team has been, for 16 seasons. You're going to have to, from the mindset now, understand that if the Kings are going to accomplish being just 500, they're going to have to steal wins on this schedule, just the way that we're looking at it right now.
Right.
And it might right now feel like a steal, but in the moment, if the Kings are playing better and they're playing a team that maybe on paper is like, oh, that's a tough matchup, but against that team on that night, the Kings are playing well. It's like, oh, they're the hotter team. They should be able to pull this game out,
right.
Especially at home. Like that's important context as well. And speaking of playing at home, Kenny, this is what's so important to me is you look at the Kings have a 6-game road trip in, I think it's early December or mid-December, when it's like Milwaukee, Cleveland, New York, Philly, Toronto, Detroit, like a tough road trip. That's not even their longest one. They have a 7-game road trip in between late end of January, early February. And during those road trips, I have the expectation of if you can just go 500 during those tough stretches, like you're in good shape. But that's with the understanding that you're handling your business at home. So again, I look at the start of the schedule and I look at 4 out of your first 5 games at home. And my honest reaction is, I don't care what the opponent is or who the opponent is in those 4 out of 5 game stretches. You have to find a way to go 3-2 during those stretches, or at the very worst 2-3, or you're not the team that you think you are.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I mean, you gotta establish yourself at home. And we talked about it on the radio the other day, and we talked about Alvin Gentry and how when he took over, he repeatedly talked about being able to win at home or the lack thereof from this team. And they just would grow increasingly even more and more frustrated with the fact that they couldn't establish themselves at home. And that's coming from a guy who's seen it all in this league, who's seen winners, who's seen championship teams. And he's looking at this whole thing like, yeah, we got to play better defense. Yeah, we got to do this. But if you can't establish yourself at home, you continuously lose these games at home, then that's just a non-starter. Like you can't go, have an 8-game stretch at home and go 3-5, go 2-6. Like that can't happen. You have to be playing high-level basketball at home, and you got to give put the word out there by the way you play and the way you execute and the way you win at home, that when you come to Sacramento, I don't care what the record is. I don't care what happened in the past. When you come to Sacramento as an opposing team, you know it's time to tie them up tight, because we're in for a fight. We're in for a tough game. They're going to be playing well. They're going to be into the game. The fans are going to be into the game, and it's going to be a long night. And if you can't establish that, in my opinion, you can't establish anything if you're not the Sacramento Kings. So I agree with what you're saying. They've got to be ready from the jump to establish that playing in Sacramento in the Golden One Center, that's going to be a long night for anybody that comes through here. And I don't care who they're playing. That's the mentality. That's the word that's got to get out there around the NBA.
Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by our friends at betonline.net. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs. Find your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. That, of course, is BetOnline. Find reviews and news of every single league, including the MLB, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, college sports, even golf. They have it all. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. And now that the Kings schedule is out, we know what the over-under win totals are for the Sacramento Kings. It's in the low 30s. Find me 36, 37 wins in that schedule. Bet on the over, and I think you're going to win that bet this year. That's just my gut feeling. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today at BetOnline, where the game starts. I saw on Twitter last night, I was trying to find it, but I couldn't track it down. There was someone created a post of teams who were playing the most games where they had more rest than their opponents. And the Kings were actually at the top of the list. I think they had like 16 games or something like that where they were the rested team versus their opponent. And at the same time, too, I find this tweet that says Kings in the back half of the schedule have the most back-to-backs, 9 out of the 41, 18 home games to 23 away, and they travel the most miles in the league from January 15th on to the end of the season. So there's give and take there. Part of me goes, oh, this is extremely important, right? If the schedule is that difficult at the back half, that you need to handle your business even more in the first half. And the other part of me goes, it's the Sacramento Kings. Like, they need to just be better overall and let those things handle themselves. Where are you kind of at in that spectrum?
I'm on the ladder, man. It don't matter if you play 82 back-to-back games. You know what I'm saying? You got to win. You got to win. You got to find a way. And when you're the Sacramento Kings, you don't get a lot of national TV games. So, some of those are built into that, right? Like, you're playing on a Thursday. ABC wants you on a Sunday. So maybe, you get a little more time. That's what happens when you're a winning team. The
Right.
Kings aren't that. So to get yourself out of the gutter, out of the mud in that respect, you're going to have to earn it. It's not going to be easy. It's not going to be a situation where the schedule is set up for you. I was surprised to see that same stat you talked about when you said they have the most games where they're the most rested team. I mean, that's a gift that the NBA seems to never give the Kings or teams like that. So you got that, take advantage of it. But I don't, and it's easy for me to say from behind this computer and, in front of a microphone. I played the game. I understand, how taxing can be on your body. I understand how you could wear down as the season goes along. So I don't want to minimize it at all. But if I'm a Kings player, I'm sitting there like, hey, I can't worry about back-to-backs. And if we're tired, we got a job to do. We got a goal we're trying to achieve. And we got to get in there and achieve it. Simple as that. I don't care if they put us on the old 98-99 schedule where we play 3 back-to-backs and 3 games in a row and play 4 games in 5 nights. If that's what we got to do to make the NBA playoffs, that's what we got to do. They got to have that mentality, man. They got to have that mentality where it's not a situation where we're looking for handouts or we're looking to get a easy road to where we're trying to go. Be expected to be a hard road and expect to take that hard road head on and try and take care of business. So I'm with you, man. They just got to win games. I don't care about the quirks in the schedule and all that other stuff. They got to figure out a way to win.
Kenny, I know you're going to be at the Golden One Center a lot this season, not just one night, of course, but you looking at the schedule when it dropped, is there a night you have circled like, oh yeah, I'm going to be at the Golden One Center. I'm not missing this matchup. We might have the same answer to this.
Man, I got a few of them, but the first one that comes to mind is when Tyrese Halliburton comes back to town.
Yep.
I want to see what this, because it's going to be ridiculous, man. It's going to be ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. The God comes home. The God comes home.
Man, I like Tyrese Halliburton. I love Tyrese Halliburton. I love his game. I love his family. I love his approach to the game. I love it all. But people act like this dude, is a 13-year veteran that took the Kings to multiple NBA finals the way they're just going to go crazy. And I already know what the reception is going to be. It's going to be this huge standing ovation. I don't think the man played 100 games here in Sacramento. But look, I'd say all the time, and I say this about Buddy Hield and Marvin Bagley as well, these guys, they should be applauded when they come back to town.
I agree completely.
Especially when you talk about Tyrese. Tyrese didn't do anything wrong to the city. He showed love. He was a good he was a good representative of the Sacramento Kings while he was here. And if they want to give him a standing ovation and multiple that's fine. That's fine. I mean, I'll be giving him a nice little ovation if I'm there. I'm not going to continue it. I remember when people say this about DeMarcus Cousins, and I didn't understand this at all. Well, I understood it. I wasn't on board with it. When they would be like, oh, I hope DeMarcus comes here and gives the Kings a 40-point triple-double just to show. No, I don't. I like DeMarcus. I love DeMarcus. I want him to play well, but I don't want the Kings to lose. I'm not looking for that. I'm not looking for them to be embarrassed on this stage. So I hope Tyrese plays fine, but I hope it comes in a blowout win for the Sacramento Kings. That's what I'll be looking for.
I agree with you completely that even with my frustrations with Buddy Hield, he absolutely deserves an ovation. He's the best three-point shooter statistically in Sacramento Kings history. And regardless of what happened, he was an important piece of that team, and he's a good dude. Overall, just good dude. Same thing with Marvin Bagley, and I expect Marvin to get a good ovation. He's always gotten a good ovation in Sacramento, even with the frustrations surrounding him, his family, his injury history, regardless. So I agree with you completely. But Tyrese's ovation, I think, is going to be on another level. And I hope the Sacramento Kings don't give into that and start doing some tribute videos for him or anything like that.
They do a tribute video. I might walk out and go One Center.
Can you imagine they do one for Tyrese and not for Buddy, though?
Come on, man. We don't need no tribute video. The man was here for 20 minutes. We don't need no damn tribute video. You have a nice little ovation. Let him put his hand up to the fans and all this other stuff, and let's move on with the game.
And honestly, look, I'm expecting Tyrese to have a good night. I'm expecting Buddy to hit some big shots. But here's the reality, and let's just be real here, Kenny. Based off what we just talked about of protecting your home floor, Sacramento should handle their business in that game.
Absolutely.
It's the Indiana Pacers here. The Indiana Pacers are not going to be a good team this year. They might surprise us, as the Kings might surprise other people. And I don't expect the Kings to be leagues better than the Indiana Pacers, but the Kings should be better than the Indiana Pacers. The Kings should handle their business at home. So it's great. Those ovations should last the beginning of the game in the first quarter. And then by the fourth quarter, Kings fans should be applauding Sacramento winning by hopefully double digits. That should be the reality.
Just move on. That's what we should do. Give them their little ovation, and then we just move on. Move on.
Just move on. Don't just rip the Band-Aid off and move on with the last thing. Well, I'm also really interested, Kenny, to see typically the games at the end of the season in April, we always wipe our hands together going, maybe that could have massive playoff implications. And in reality, the Kings are 15 games out of it by that point. We're just oh, just get the season over with. But the Golden State Warriors game on the 7th, which is the second to last game, is the final home game. So it'll be fan appreciation night inside the Golden One Center. Boy, I hope that game is meaningful to some extent.
Absolutely. I mean, and to be honest with you, it'd probably just be meaningful for the Kings. I'm assuming
probably
they'll have whatever they got going on wrapped up, and they may be looking to prepare themselves for the playoffs at that point. But hey, Matt, to be perfectly honest with you, if we're getting greedy, I hope it's meaningless for both teams and in a positive way. Hopefully the Kings are already, have everything sewed up, whether it's play-in or an actual playoff spot ready to go. And both teams are sitting up there looking to just prepare themselves for the postseason or the play-in or whatever the case may be. I hope that game don't mean nothing. How about that?
I love that. I love that, Kenny Caraway. Well, you can get more takes like that from D'Lo and KC Monday through Friday, ESPN 1320 noon to 4. And then that coverage extends even further. Hell, on Kings game nights, half the time you guys are going 6-7 hours because you're insane. But I have the pleasure of joining them once a week. So I had to get Kenny here on Locked On Kings. Appreciate you helping me run through the schedule a little bit more, KC. Unfortunately, we still got 2 months to go. But like I said, training camp coming, football coming. So we'll get through high school football starting this week also here in Sacramento, which was one thing Tyrese Halliburton loved here in Sacktown. So excited about that. But man, you do such great work. Thank you for coming on Locked On Kings, my friend, and we'll do it again very soon. It's always such a pleasure having my friend KC on. Kenny is so insightful, does phenomenal work over on ESPN 1320. He and D'Lo just celebrated 2 years of that radio show's existence. In my opinion, the best radio show in Sacramento. I just really appreciate him and them taking the time that they do here on Locked On Kings. Kenny always provides such a fun perspective, a unique insight, and I'm very thankful and blessed to have him come here on Locked On Kings. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I know you want to respond to some of the stuff that Kenny and I talked about. Fire away. You can do that on Twitter at @MattGeorgeSack. If you want to reach me, you can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Or if you're watching on YouTube, of course, join the conversation in the comment section down below. Really appreciate your support. Back-to-back episodes on back-to-back days. How about that? It's been a while since I've done that here during this off season, and that will ramp back up, of course, as we get into end of September, beginning of October, when training camp is going on, when preseason is beginning. We'll get back to that 5 days a week schedule. That's coming very, very soon. I appreciate the patience that you have during this slow time with the 3 episodes per week. Sometimes I'll make it 4 if the news is out there, but you support no matter what, and I'm always so thankful for that. So thank you again. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.